So today we're going to talk about Abraham Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln.
No, that sounds crazy, but Abe Lincoln, 16th president of the US, right? He actually can teach us a whole lot about marketing.
Yeah. There's a ton of people in history that could teach you a lot about marketing, not just Abe Lincoln, but let's discuss why Abe Lincoln was important.
And if you know anything about Abraham Lincoln, we're going to talk a little bit about his early years as we go through some of these things that he taught us, but he actually voiced some pretty controversial opinions. So number one, the first thing Abraham Lincoln teaches us about marketing is that it is okay to gain attention by voicing your opinion. And sometimes those go against popular belief. So he actually, he spoke out against slavery when he was running against, what was his name, Stephen Douglas for Senate. And even though he lost that election, it gained him so much attention that, it set the stage for him ultimately becoming president. What does that tell us about marketing?
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing with Abe Lincoln is, he gained attention by voicing his opinions, right? That's probably the first thing to think about.
So if you're a company or, you're a small business, big business, if you're a solopreneur or whatever you are, speak up, for the things that you believe in and share those opinions.
Right. And just because it may not gain traction right away, it doesn't mean that you're not going to eventually gain traction. Like, don't get frustrated by it, right? If it's if you put some media message out on social media and, all of a sudden you don't have 1 million followers on Instagram, it doesn't mean your message isn't important, right? It doesn't mean you should veer away from your message the first time you try it.
Yeah. The second thing Abe taught us was, about messaging and to define your beliefs and, stand by them no matter what, again, to the point that he was not, his opinion was not a popular one when he thought that, the state shouldn't have the ability to decide whether or not they wanted to, keep slavery. So it was not a popular opinion. And what do you always say about haters, though?
Haters are fans. They just don't know it.
So he was not afraid to gain haters. And I think that's a really important second point, is to define that message for your company and for yourself.
I think the other thing about, you talked about Abe Lincoln and his early life a little bit earlier, right? And I think, people don't realize the diversity he was at, and he always kept learning and trying to improve himself. And I think that was a big thing with Abe Lincoln too. The tenacity of always, trying to understand something new or learn something new, I think was part of how he marketed himself.
Yeah. So, you're a company, even if you're successful, you don't just stop there. You keep learning, you keep figuring out what's next and how to evolve. Abe came from illiterate parents, and when his mother died, they actually, his father took him, they squatted on some land, and there were no books. So he had to travel miles. He would walk miles just to borrow books, and he would, he taught himself. Then eventually he got some formal education and, became a lawyer. But by the way, he did not go to school for law. I learned that today.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that, that speaks to you, right? Sometimes, marketing is not so easy or cut and dry. And sometimes you have to put the work in. I think a lot of people today think they could just go out and, purchase Google AdWords, right? And not learn anything. I mean, even if you use that as the example, Google AdWords, the algorithms, the AI behind it actually takes time to learn, right? And get really used to it. So you have to put in the work, even some of the tools, the smart tools have to put in the work to understand what's actually really happened. Don't, as a marketer, don't think, that you're always going to have access to that book in hand. You may have to walk a mile to figure out, to get that knowledge. So, know that sometimes the journey is going to be long to get to where you need to go, especially with so much data out there. I think a lot of times it takes us a while to get enough data to get a real true picture of what's actually happening also. And we expect it instantly. We're in this society where things get delivered tomorrow. I get data right away, and it should be in real time. But sometimes you need to have a long, chunk of data to sort of understand what the patterns are. And I think that's where sometimes marketers get frustrated.
The fourth thing that Abe taught us, marketers, is that we should be, and how many times do we say this? to go where your audience hangs out, right? Be
Yes.
where the audience is. And here's my favorite example, as cliche as it is. When he delivered the Gettysburg Address, where did he go? He went to the bloodiest battlefield of the Civil War, and spoke to 15,000 people. He didn't sit behind a desk and deliver that message. He went where the people were.
Right. Yeah. And he connected to his audience. It was a big deal. He connected with them one-on-one, not just, do you know what I mean? Not just he went there, he connected with those people one-on-one by doing that.
So if you're marketing, you need to be where your audience is, whether that be Facebook. Maybe your audience is particularly fond of Facebook groups, or, they're big Instagram people. Be where they are and be in front of them.
Another thing too in that is, we talk about this also, you have the audience. Make sure you're connecting with that audience and communicating with that audience. Don't ignore them, right? Just because they showed up, if he ignored them while it was going on, he wouldn't have made the true connections with those people. So you need to make sure, like, if you're growing your Facebook or your Instagram or your website, and people are asking questions or shooting emails or messages, the ones that are legit, respond to, connect with that audience, make that connection with them. Mm-hmm. Don't ignore them.
To that point, when you're talking about communication, Abe delivered hundreds of speeches over the course of his life. And what he didn't do, what he did do is he was direct, and strong, and, he didn't dance around things and fluff things up. He just said things like it is. And I think that's really important for companies to just come out and say what they're saying. And yes, we emphasize storytelling all the time, but you can tell stories and be direct and not dance around topics. Just speak to your audience. Another thing Abe did was he used stuff that was already out there to support his speeches and, his work. So, I think when we talk about research and then the importance of research and marketing, and, maybe looking and learning from other companies or people that went before you, this is what he did. And he did that, for example, in that Gettysburg Address, he quoted, he really used the Declaration of Independence and our founding fathers as kind of like the foundation of that speech. And he talked about life, liberty, or, all men are created equal, and, of the people, what is it? Of the people, by the people, for the people, or yeah. So those were some of his quotes during that speech. I am obviously not a Constitution, Declaration of Independence quoter.
I think that brings up a really good point. Like, the next thing I would say is where he was really good at captivating his audience, right? He would captivate the audience. Some of his speeches were hours long, but, everyone felt, and I know we talked about this, that they were connected to him. We talked about storytelling. They were involved in the speech. They were connected to Abraham Lincoln. And that becomes, whether it's written content, visual content, whatever you're doing, people need to feel the connection to you. It becomes a big thing. If they feel connected to you, they're going to keep watching, or they're going to look out for, the next episode of, on your YouTube channel, or whatever the case is. So they need to feel connected to you as the individual.
So another thing Abe taught us, number 8, is to put in the work. And, you can shoot off the side of your hip and write a bunch of stuff, but really you need to be prepared. And what we mean by that is kind of do the research. And we, a lot of what we emphasize is that meaning making, and looking at what is your audience really looking for, and, find out what they're looking for, and then give them that. What are they asking about? So be prepared. Don't just, a lot of times we think, we think this is interesting, so we want to write about it or talk about it or whatever it is. But what is the audience really asking for? So do that preparation.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And that's why meaning making, that becomes so important, because, we see so many times companies want to write about what they're interested in, or say an engineer at their company's interested in, but it's not really what the users are interested in. And the users that you need to attract to your site, to, especially if you're selling product, may have a totally different interest than even the people developing the product. So I think you need to, also look at how the users are really coming into you, and, and feel free. You got questions, put them in the comments below. We'd be happy to help.
I like this last point. The 9th thing I think Abe taught marketers is really about being logical. And so, you don't, and I don't know the best way to say this. What I really like about this is that you can be calm, cool, and collective while kind of stating your facts. So, there are some companies who are involved in some passionate things, and, they get really heated about things, but, just be clear and concise. Don't, go off on tangents like we do, just don't do as I do as I say. But, I think being logical, and this applies to all aspects of marketing, not
Mhm.
even just how you communicate, but be logical with your spend or with
Yeah.
your, whatever it might be.
And I think too, what happens is when you're a little bit more logical about it and you don't get emotional, right? You don't get tied into the emotions of it. Now, you want to tell your story with emotion, don't get me wrong. But, when you're communicating, don't, if people are debating with you, it's don't get angry, be more logical on it, but it also helps you deliver a clearer message and stay focused on what your mission is versus someone dragging you down a rabbit hole or into something that really, has nothing to do with your mission. So I think being logical, I agree, is it's a very strong piece in your marketing effort or your business strategy.
So those are 9 things that Abe Lincoln taught us about marketing.
Thank you, Abe.